inductees today into the Million Mile Club. What the Million Mile Club is that you've driven over 1 million miles of public transit for the Citrus Connection, which equals 12.5 years of full-time driving. But to be eligible for the Million Mile Club at the Citrus Connection, you also have to have that 12.5 years without a preventable accident. And we have 2 distinguished drivers here today who have met that requirement. I'm happy to say these are 2 of many that will be recognized over the coming months at the Citrus Connection. So at first, I'd like Carmen Alves to come up. Carmen is one of our fixed route operators, and she is our newest inductee to the Million Mile Club. Congratulations, and thank you for all that you've done. Okay. Last but certainly not least is Shonda Perez. Shonda has been driving for 1 million miles safely. Not only that, but she is the first person to make sure that we are all doing our job safely, and we appreciate all the recommendations that you've had over the years, and we look forward to another 1 million miles. Commissioners and the general public, when they are in our break area, we have a 1 million miler plaque. Their names have been added to the 1 million miler plaque. They'll also be receiving a iron-on badge that they're going to be able to put on their uniform that recognizes them as one of the few distinguished 1 million milers. So thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Yes, thank you for what you do for our citizens and keeping us safe at the same time. Thank you. Now, Mr. Phillips,
yes.
You going to make this introduction?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, from time to time, we have changes at some of our most strategic partners. And as you know, we've spent a good amount of time this last year discussing our partnership with Elder Point Ministries. There's been an executive transition at Elder Point Ministries. And so I'd like to introduce Lacey Gardner to come to the dais and just introduce herself and give a brief 5-minute presentation about her vision. As you all know, we enjoy a one-of-a-kind-in-the-nation insurance partnership with Elder Point Ministries. This goes back to Hurricane Irma and working with Commissioner Lindsay and the organization in using their vans during Hurricane Irma to get people to and from the shelters. In order to do that, we insured their vehicles. And then in discussions with Commissioner Lindsay, who was the chair at the time, the discussion was, well, why can't we keep doing this? Well, we can through a proper partnership that involves drug testing, background checks, quality assurance checks. And so that continues to this day. And Lacey, if you'd like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about the vision of the organization, we're happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm Lacey Gardner. I accepted the position beginning of the month. Actually started the day after Memorial Day. However, I'm very intimately familiar with Elder Point because I served on the board for a little while. I was actually nominated to be the recruitment chair to replace or recruit a new executive director. And we had great talent that applied. And I brought to the board a couple of concerns that we needed somebody that was in the community that had the relationships. And we also could not expect someone to relocate their lives given the circumstances that we were in currently and also the state of the organization. And after lengthy conversations, it was brought to me that they felt like I was a good candidate. I was by all means not looking for a job, but I was also I am extremely passionate about what Elder Point does. My background is senior healthcare, senior living. So I encounter seniors on a daily basis. I'm very intimately familiar with what their needs are, especially in this community, because I have worked with them hand in hand. As far as vision, I don't believe that any organization that doesn't grow or change will not be significantly relevant any longer. So, of course, we're going to keep our core foundation of transportation and nutrition as our focus, but we're also growing some arms in as far as services. And the services will be basically a family resource center. So whenever there is a challenge, whenever they encounter something that they're not familiar with, or they just don't know where to go or who to go to, what questions to ask, we're really going to position ourselves in the community to be that individual organization that you can come in. I have 20 years in the industry. I can pretty much have a conversation of about 20 minutes with a family, know exactly what they need and who to go to, and what resources that are available for them, and what services that they can get. So we're going to add that arm of the organization of services. And I am one of the thought leaders as far as whenever I see a need, I'm able to quickly make a change and adapt to what that need is. And I feel like that's what I have stepped into. I see a lot of needs in what we're doing, and to reestablish ourselves in the community as what we should be recognized as, and rebuild relationships. We're really excited about the future of Elder Point, and you're going to see a lot of good things coming from us. So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Chair, may I ask a question?
Congratulations.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question, please? Thank you. I wanted to, I heard you say you want to make sure you can build relationships, that kind of thing. And I often wonder about the partnership or about the relationship between the different senior particular groups, and especially one under Mr. McMillan with Faith in Action North. Have you made contact?
I have not made contact with him.
No, with
Her. I have not made. I actually also learned about another organization yesterday. One of my passions is connecting people.
Yes.
I love to learn about what their passions are and how they serve, so I can connect individuals to one another. And I have an absolute desire to network. So as far as getting out there and meeting people, it's not going to be a challenge. If there's anybody that you feel like I should know, send them my way, tell me who to go, and I will do all the work to make sure that it happens.
All right, well, I'm glad I heard that, because I know I was wondering why there was a disconnect
No,
between
you're
Elder
right.
Point and Faith in Action North, because it was at one time Faith in Action that was a south
right.
and a north.
And it was interesting because I was in the office last week, and Charlie with the RAF Center was giving me a lot of history of what the organization is. And I had a lot of questions. Why aren't we doing that any longer?
Right.
There's funding out there. There's opportunity out there. You know, we should be, if we're not
Sure.
at the table providing, we need to be at the table in conversation.
I agree. Thank you very much. I'll get you the name.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, I believe the mayor has a comment or a question.
Mayor Motz.
Yes, Lacey, thank you so much for that presentation to us. And as you think about integrating families more in the process of what you're doing, does that make you also consider a need to change the name or reconsider the name at any level?
I'm so glad you asked that. Yes, yes. I can't give you much detail, but there is something in the works currently, yes.
Good.
Not a whole lot
Well,
of change, but
I think you
yes.
want people to know. Right.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I will just make a comment for Commissioner Walker's sake that Mildred, as you know, was a 5310 recipient
Right.
for a number of years,
Right.
and has now chosen, due to the changes at DOT and the paperwork requirements, she's no longer a 5310 recipient.
Right.
If she changes that position, then she would be eligible for our insurance partnership. So I want you to know, Commissioner, we did reach out to her. She was on our list for the insurance partnership because we knew she had 5310 vehicles, but she has chosen to not apply for that grant. But any organization that applies for that grant, and if she changes her mind, we can partner with her on that.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I didn't realize that I was going to be seeing you again.
Item number 6, Mr. Prasad.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
We have our financial through the month of April 2020, starting with LAMTD. With 58% of the fiscal year, our revenues are 6.9 million, or 109%. Expenses likewise are 5.7 million, or 90%. Looking at our major revenues, fare box is a little down from last month, 80%, because of the decline in ridership and services. We're still waiting our check from Ramco. The attorney is helping us, 93,000. We're doing quite well in our ad valorem taxes, 4.8 million, or 98%. And we have just got permission to start drawing in our 5307. 2.4 million, we have drawn 608,000, and for FDOT, 197,000. So hopefully, because of the lapse in the grant allocation and the authorization, we should start making significant draws on these grants and bring our revenues up. On the expenses side, we normally look at our major expenses. Salaries and fringe benefits, that makes up 65% of the budget. We're 10% under budget, which is a good favorable sign. Fuel is within the budget, so is parts and materials and supplies. Overall revenues and our over expense is 1.2 million. So we have favorable cash flow. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Prasad? Very much. Do you have any questions for Mr. Prasad?
No, sir.
All
All
right.
right, moving on, we have the Polk County agreement, the financials to April. And the revenues are 87% of the budget, and the expenses are also 87% of the budget. The biggest revenue source is the grants match from the county, 2.1 million, and the city contribution just under $500,000. And we have made a significant draw on the FTA, 0.9 million. And the reason why we are able to draw on the 5307 for the county, because these are prior year FTA allocation. So that enables some positive cash flow. The labor costs are 89% of the budget. Contract is lagging 80%, and that's because we lagged for 1 month. Operation is 97%. So the revenues and expenses are within the budget, 13%.
And I'd like to thank the board. The decision to move away from links and move to transitions has really worked out well financially, but it's also worked out operationally as well.
Good.
Good.
And the next financial report is for the transportation disadvantage. And this is this operation is in a state fiscal year, July through June. The total revenues through April, 1.2 million or 94%, and expenses are 1 million or 84%. The revenues are favorable and all the expenses are within the budget. Overall, the revenues exceeded the expenses by 120,000. And the reason I mentioned that is because 90% of the funding is from the state and 10% from the county for the match. So there are no financial obligations to the district, but we are doing financially well in managing the program.
I believe it was Commissioner Lindsay who once said that we should be doing it at least break even.
Questions for Mr. Prasad on that issue?
The next item is to approve the transportation disadvantage for the next fiscal year. As I indicated earlier, this budget is on a July 1, June the 30th fiscal year, starting July 1, 2020. The total budget is 1,483,250, and we have the line item expenses presented as an attachment. The revenues are 90% from the state or 1.3 million. And the 10% grants match 148,000 is in the proposed budget for the county that we've already submitted. So this operation is totally self-sustaining.
And the total number of authorized full-time positions, board members, is 16. That is consistent with last year. There are no staff additions that are here. As a reminder, we do not differentiate the vehicles for TD versus paratransit. So a driver can pick up TD customers as well as paratransit customers within the same vehicle. Those customers would not even know whether they're TD or ADA, but we keep that separate. So this is our Fund 6, where the county's on Fund 5, and then LAMTD's Fund 1.
Any questions for Mr. Prasad or for Mr. Phillips? This is an approval item. I'll need a motion and a second.
Approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries.
The next agenda item is an approval item, and this is for the allocation for Lakeland Area Mass Transit District. It's for the CARES program, Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Recovery. The district is receiving $7,023,403. And we are forced by time to make an early submission to get these funds obligated. And the staff is presenting the allocation for a proposed drawdown. One of the insight or one of the requirement, because it's a stimulus funding, is quick drawdown of these funds. The allocation that we are presenting is for park and ride bathroom at Cowfields, $383,000. Non-fleet maintenance, which is this facility to improve the infrastructure, 1.7 million. We have been looking at our financial management software, which is just under 10 years old. when it was procured, it was basically for a small operation for LAMTD with the TD and the county program now and the growing budget. And the system is really obsolete. We are looking at improving our financial management system. And in order to obligate the funds as well, we are allocating 0.5 million. When I was at Hart, we implemented an ERP system for 2.6 million. So these systems are normally very expensive. There's a terminal position for 3 years funding, and that's basically to aid in the transit asset management plan, which is an FTA requirement. We have stop shelter repairs, 100,000, a route maintenance position for 3 years, 176,000, personal protection equipment, 100,000, some service expansion, which will be addressed in more detail with the routes, 792,000, eight replacement buses, 2.8 million. Yes.
I'm pleased that, excuse me,
Go ahead, Mr. Lindsay, then Mr. Walker.
recognized by Mr. Phillips. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Certainly the majority of the position, the items and the dollars are dedicated to capital related expenses, but there's over $1 million associated with expanded services or warm bodies. Now, what's going to happen when this runs out? So
I'm
Yes.
sure you're going to have 3 questions there, and
Yeah.
you can answer all 3 at the same time.
Yes, sir. So we anticipated that you would be asking that, that question. So when it comes to the terminal coordinator positions, right now we have terminal coordinators effectively for 8 hours a day at each of our locations, and we have more service than 8 hours a day. So we would be very clear with the people that we were hiring that this is 3 years of grant funding in order to be able to have this particular terminal position. So we would be very upfront with those individuals that this could be a 3-year commitment and time period. Because we have other terminal coordinators and looking at our attrition rate, and Steve can talk a little bit about that, it is very likely, as long as we're upfront with them, that through attrition, there would be a position that was there, because we are not creating, and we want to be very careful with you board members, to not create new positions that others could not fall into. And that is obviously the same with our route maintenance positions as well. So looking at our attrition rates, as the funding runs out, these are positions that we currently have. And while we don't want to lose Mr. Klinka or anyone else, looking at our staff retention plan, these would be positions that as the funding starts to run out, we would be able to put them in place. Commissioner Lindsay, I think where we learned our lesson as staff, and you know that we did not do a great job on this traditionally, is setting consistent, clear communications with the community on the route expansion, that this funding is limited, that it is to the CARES funding, that it does not touch the fair share agreements because this is 100% funding. But Commissioner Lindsay, learning the lessons that we did not put in place with the Smart Shuttle in Winter Haven. And it's,
you still created the expectation
yes, we did.
and the dependency.
And we did not communicate well with the community for a variety of reasons, which were all staff's issues.
How do you overcome that created expectation and dependency on a service for 3 years and all of a sudden you say, well, we're not going to do it tomorrow?
Yes, sir. So from day one, communicating that this is a 3-year grant and that this is a 3-year time period that we have this from day one. But what we didn't have last time that we have now is that Ms. Killebrew and I and her department are already setting the expectations with the municipalities, because we're there at least 2 or 3 times a year in each of these municipalities, that this is going to be free for the next 3 years due to the CARES funding. But this is what it's going to cost once the funding runs out. So Davenport's being communicated to, Mulberry's being communicated to, that this route is funded for 3 years. But as of today, we can tell you what that cost is going to be
So
if
is
you
there
want
a
it to
quid pro
continue.
quo in that communication? We're going to do it for 3 years. Are you going to pick it up thereafter before we commit to do it? If they don't agree to pick it up year 4, then don't do year 1 through 3.
We have not had that conversation yet. What we have said at this point is there's CARES funding to be able to do this. This would be what the cost is. We can change that communication before we start these routes. Even if the board approves this, we can We can change that communication with the municipalities to say if, then when. If the board would like that, that's definitely something that Ms. Killebrew and I can do.
For the terminal position and route maintenance position, I accept your explanation.
Yes, sir.
That there is sufficient turnover to accommodate
Yes, sir.
that. It won't be someone into the pink
No,
slip
sir.
at the end of 3 years. But the expansion of service is a greater commitment that's hard to turn off the faucet on the other end. So if we need to put an asterisk by that, subject to change, that would be my opinion anyway.
Commissioner Walker?
Well, I think you, as you're saying, Mr. Liz, it builds expectancy, you know, because folk get used to something and you've spent 3 years and then boom, all of a sudden it's cut off. I think it's a greater challenge and it kind of leaves us kind of a disdain, kind of a moment in time about what happened. So I can surely be in agreement with what you're saying. I would love for us to be able to expand and do more, but we got to make sure in doing all that, we got to be careful, you know, what the expectancy is once you got these dollars and it's gone. I have a question about the bathroom situation that we've been talking about, you know, whatever. However, so is this additional to money? This is additional monies we're getting that you're putting toward that? Because I thought we had funding already for that.
This is additional funding that we will have to complete the project.
Okay. So with the funding we had was not
Sufficient, correct.
All right.
What I'm hearing from two of the board members, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I got Mayor Mutz next.
Yes.
Okay.
And then Commissioner McCullough.
I appreciate the concerns expressed by Commissioner Lindsay and Commissioner Walker. I am, and it is just 3 years, but on the other hand, it's 3 years of transportation, and for which, if passed, CARES provisions are taking place. And what I feel like is so true of Citrus Connection and the ability to do everything that you have been able to accomplish in the last particularly last 2 to 3 years, is that there is a, if we're communicating up front that these are care funds, and there is a knowledge that people know that these are extraordinary funds that can't be necessarily counted on in the future, and we're providing routes for people that wouldn't be provided for otherwise, which is part of our service expansion we'd like to do, and we then have the ability to see what kind of load we are able to carry on those routes, then I also, excuse me, then I also think we have the capacity, if and when those funds change, if they're not replaced by something else that we can determine we could shift, to figure out how to handle those routes then going forward and maximize the opportunities, both of vehicles and people, because of the team that's in place. I really think it's an opportunity for us to lean into provision and to measure performance, and then to be nimble enough to create the corrections that will be required that we can't know at this point in time what they're going to be, and they're not, future funding would exist.
I have two things. The first thing, just really quickly, as Commissioner Walker said about the bathrooms, what would be the total budget on the restrooms at Gowfields if we already had money allocated for this and then now another 383?
We're going to get you that number.
Okay. And how many are going to be there? That's a lot of, $383,000 is a lot for a little building.
Yes.
That's okay. We can come back to that.
We're going to get you the construction.
Then as far, and then with regard to the, not the terminal position, but the routes, I agree with Commissioner Lindsay and Commissioner Walker. We might be able to communicate that to the municipalities themselves, but I'm worried about the riders, that's a clear communication to the riders, because you are cultivating an expectation. They're going to use that for work, and they're going to be reliant upon it. Not even expectation, they'll be reliant. Yeah. And so we have to be very clear with that. Does the CARES Act tell us the areas in which we have to use this? And is that one of the areas that we have to use it in, is route development? No. Or addition?
No,
okay.
It is, the CARES funding is about, I'm sorry, yes and no. Yes, the money has to be spent in the Lakeland urbanized area.
Right.
We can use it for any purpose that 5307 allows. So we can use it for buses, we can use it for new routes. We do not have to do new routes. We can do whatever we want, but it has to be within the Lakeland urbanized area. And the only thing we cannot do with the CARES funding is make the system fare free or plug a fare hole with the dollars. What I'm hearing is possibly that you would like to see a motion of local support and funding for the CARES routes from our local funding partners after the funding lapses prior to implementation of a route. Is that?
Well,
Can I finish? Sorry, can I finish? I totally agree with that. I think there has to be something signed in a contract manner that says that the onus will be on the route bearers, not the riders, but whoever we're working with, whether it's municipal or corporate sponsors or whatever. So, and that plan should be in place, knowing that that would be 2024 or 2023.
2024.
2024, that they know that at that point in time, and that, you know, that they pick up that slack. Because I just don't know how we kind of wiggle our way
I
out
think that's true.
under it.
yeah.
Commissioner Lindsay?
Well, I agree with that approach, and part of that conversation needs to be established a ridership matrix. How much is it used? How many, where are they going? What are they doing? And if there are certain thresholds that are exceeded, then the expectation is greater. If we find out that it's not working
being
or
used, yeah.
underutilized, then
You can understand why
the
you couldn't.
municipality could have a choice. So that has to be part of the conversation.
Yes,
But on the same conversation talks about the Winter Haven side of
Yes,
the
sir.
equation also for the same.
Same, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Why is there not the opportunity to take money of this magnitude for major capital purchases, such as the land or the building or the something, to create a hub, maintenance hub on that side, to avoid that dead end back and forth every day? If the whole idea is to expand countywide service and to create a presence over there that commits to the service and reduces the cost of running back and forth over here every day. Where else are you gonna have this kind of money fall in your lap?
Yes, sir.
And win again. Yes.
Hopefully.
The circumstances never.
Never, right.
Yeah, let's not do it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, but no, I'm like we all saying, you know, we take advantage of what we can, and the dollars that we're going to receive to make sure that we can better our entire organization's platform, the footprint as best we can. So.
Absolutely. So what we can do, if you would like, is because the route that we are proposing, which Bill Canarium would be going over, is a Mulberry route across 60 into Bartow, ending in Eagle Ridge Mall. So the cost would be shared between the two CARES funding. So Commissioner Lindsay, you're right, in so much as that the approval of the Lakeland UZA route expansion is linked to the Winter Haven route expansion. So if that were funded, if you chose to move forward with that portion, we could still have the municipal contract in place prior to doing something. If you'd like us to rework these proposals and bring them back to you next month to look at the East Polk County Maintenance Facility on the east side, answer some of the questions about the restroom facilities, that's absolutely something that we can do. That seems to be the two major questions. Commissioner Lindsay, what I would recommend is that looking, not to get ahead of us, but looking at the Winter Haven side of the proposal, I would highly recommend that you allow us to leave in the 6 replacement buses for the county side of the operation. We have the CIP budget, as you know, the 0.68 million for LAMTD. The county does not have a CIP budget currently, which you've never had, and that's okay. We've always been grant reliant on the county side of the equation. But I would ask that we be allowed to keep those 6 buses kind of earmarked there, and then we could rework the Winter Haven side of the proposal, bring it back to you next month, looking at the East County Maintenance Facility side. Doing that then tables the LAMTD side as well, since the routes are intermingled. It would also give us time to answer Commissioner Walker's and Commissioner McCarley's questions about the rest of them.
Mayor Mutz, I see that you have something to say. If you could give me just a moment, and because I've got some thoughts here also. if we can do this for 3 years, if we can allow families to work and feed themselves and put themselves in shelter, and if we are clear that this is for a potential 3-year period, I would much rather do this and let them work if they needed to. If they need to get from Mulberry to Lakeland somewhere, but just be clear that if it's not picked up at the end of 3 years, it goes away. I know that there's a feeling that there's going to be an expectation at the end of that 3 years, and I agree with you. But we have 3 years to come up with a solution. The people sitting around this table, I think, are very intelligent people that can come up with that solution in a 3-year period. Now, if we had 3 hours, I'm not sure that we could do that. But if we can let families, give them mobility, let them get to jobs, feed their families, house their families, even if it's for 3 years.
Then cut them off.
Well,
That's what I'm worried about.
we don't know that we will cut them off, is the thing. Between now and that 3-year period, we have an opportunity to come up with a solution, working with the municipalities, working with the county, working with Lakeland Area Mass Transit. What would the solution be? We have the ability to give this to them for 3 years and let them be self-sufficient. That is my thoughts. Mayor Mutz?
Well, I concur, and I think we all actually agree. It's just how we're parsing it. Yes, we ought to have contracts, and yes, we ought to have those in advance so that everybody knows what the future commitments are going to be. Probably we have the ability to be creative enough to figure out continuing solutions. We don't know that, and I'm not guaranteeing that. I just have a lot of confidence in the frugalness of this organization. And I want to weigh in one more thing, which is my concern on the transportation on the east side of the county. That can be a high recurring cost after the fact, if in fact we have difficulty with managing and housing enough of our mechanics in that arena. And I would be very interested in Mr. Cheney's view on whether or not 2 shops can be run and filled well, or if that would create some expectation in a utilization. Would we actually have more cost expense by not running the buses over and creating another cost center than we would have optimizing the one we're in? Or do we really need to expand to a larger center or to a second center? So I'd be interested in that input in this process as well.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I'm hearing the board accurately, we're in June. The grant allows us pre-award authority, but this proposed route and these changes would take place with the start of the fiscal year in October. So what we could do is take the feedback that the board has given us, rework the Winter Haven side to address the East Polk County Maintenance Facility while leaving the vehicles in, if that's the desire of the board. And then that gives us a little bit of time as staff to work on talking with our funding partners and seeing what a letter of commitment or intent would look like before you approve the CARES fund. Because again, we need to get this approved. It doesn't have to happen at the June board meeting.
Commissioner Lindsay?
There's never been a time, in my recollection, that the grants on the county side haven't come through in order to fund the fleet.
Correct.
So establishing a fleet policy there may be not as critical as it is on the LAMTD side, where nothing was there and no reliable sources.
Yes, sir.
But I'm still reluctant to create an ongoing obligation without an ongoing revenue stream. In spite of the benefits that may be accrued for 3 years. you've created that expectation. And if indeed there is the demand there, I think there's realistic expectation that Mulberry may get on board with their funding, which would make that connection you referred to. They passed the referendum, they just never implemented it. So there's some softening associated with that. But I'm reluctant to commit one-time dollars for long-term obligations.
Taking that feedback, we can definitely bring back 2 proposals next month that are abbreviated agenda in July. One, CARES funding for Lakeland and Winter Haven UZAs that include a route expansion with a financial commitment component, Commissioner Lindsay, and another set of CARES proposals for the board that do not include routing, but include a East Polk County maintenance facility. And you're correct, Commissioner Lindsay, the county has never had a CIP budget. So
Is that needed?
it wasn't the ARA funding from President Obama and that stimulus purchased the Winter Haven area transit buses that have gotten us to this point. So this CARES funding would be the next impetus. The county has always done well thanks to TD and 5310 in that you're heavy on the para side and those give us para vehicles. The fixed route side is the side that's needed to be addressed and this CARES funding will allow us to do that. So if I'm hearing you correct, if that's the will of the board, we'll bring forward 2 proposals next month. One that includes service, one that doesn't. Both will include an East County maintenance facility budget in the Winter Haven side.
That will we,
And a breakout of bathrooms costs.
Commissioner Walker. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, I think the mayor had asked, will we hear from Mr. Cheney about?
Yes.
Okay, we'll hear all that once you bring this back to us. So we hear and understand and see whatever, I guess, the lay of the land is when it comes to 2 different.
Yes, sir. Mr. Commissioner, if I may, when Dr. Ross sends out his survey to you all, I believe the East Polk County Maintenance Facility may be one of those items that
Okay.
you choose to discuss in the strategic planning portion.
Mm-hmm.
That and Dr. Ross has really asked that we have the board meeting after the retreat this year, not before. So maybe if we discuss the East Polk County Maintenance Facility as a strategy,
Mm-hmm.
then you would have the ability to look at the CARES funding thereafter.
Question, Mr. Phillips. This is a one-time transfer, but we have 3 years to implement.
They would like to see it spent within 3 years. It is the federal government, so they will be.
I mean, is there,
I'm gonna let
is there some clawback provision if it's not spent within 3 years?
The grant doesn't have a limit on it from the FDA standpoint. The FDOT has placed the 3-year limit to expedite the funds because it's stimulus funding.
Okay, but it is a one-time transfer.
Yes, sir.
Yes, one-time allocation.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so,
With no match.
No match.
okay. All right, just
Table
nods,
these or
Table these 2.
or
just
I'm asking,
nods of
Understanding what you're looking-
you want to have Mr. Phillips bring it back next month for us to consider.
2 proposals.
2 proposals.
One that includes
for-
service,
Yeah.
one that doesn't.
Right.
Both will include an East County Maintenance Facility proposal
Mm-hmm.
pending the discussion that the board has at the retreat.
Okay,
Yes.
everyone's in agreement there?
Yes.
Okay. No action on those.
Tables that.
All right,
Next
uh,
one, too.
Because we're going to table that too, because it's got both.
It's on.
Yes,
that's
yeah.
it.
So now on.
Item number 7, Mr. Darby.
Yes, Chairman Hall, Commissioners, there are 3 items today. The first one, Peace River Universal Access Agreement Renewal. The agreement, the proposed renewal agreement is substantially the same. However, through negotiations between Aaron Killebrew and Peace River representative, there are 3 changes. One change is item 1, which instead of just having the agreement go from year to year, the proposal is to have it for 1-year terms with automatic renewals for 2 successive 1-year terms. However, it's subject to being terminated by either party with or without cause on 60 days notice. So that just prevents the consideration of it each year. But as indicated in item number 3, which is referred to in section 1, it can be terminated by either party with or without cause upon 60 days notice. The only other change was in paragraph 4 there. Paragraph 4 relates to the days on which the district does not operate. The 2 holidays, President's Day and Columbus Day, had been in there as days on which the district didn't operate, but now the district operates on those days. So President's Day and Columbus Day are out. So, yes, sir.
Can't we just have some generic language, may be changed from time to time by the board of directors, so that if we add a day or drop a day, just give us a caveat that whatever reason,
Yes,
add or drop something in the interim, we've got the flexibility to do it.
right. Yes, I just worked off the previous agreement as it was presented to me. So yes, sir, that would be a great idea for future purposes on all these
Yes.
agreements.
All right.
Okay, so those are the changes. Otherwise, the agreement is the same as it was last month.
Move approval.
Second.
Is that an approval with the
The
noted?
holiday change,
With the correction.
the holiday, for the holiday provision.
Okay, yes, sir, I will correct that or change that.
All right. Mayor Motz, if you can hear us, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion from you?
None at all, I agree.
Okay. All right, motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Darby?
Number 2, Pace Center for Girls proposed easement agreement for a transit shelter on the Pace Center for Girls property, which is located on Orange Street, corner of Orange Street and Fowler Avenue in Lakeland. A question has arisen as to the location of the easement now, in that there are a lot of moving parts to these situations, and that if the easement, if the transit shelter is to be constructed in the city and the easement is in the road right of way, then it's necessary to obtain a permit from the city of Lakeland based on approval of the site and building plans. If the easement is on a private party's property, then obviously it's necessary to get an easement on that party's property. The proposal was that the easement would be a 5-foot by 20-foot strip on the property, the Pace Center for Girls property, which is actually owned by Sally B. Petkoff Trust. So we proceeded on that basis, and we've done everything we can to accomplish that easement on the property, and we've established a location which would be the 5 by 20-foot strip adjoining the parking lot. If you're looking, as Commissioner McCarley's looking at the picture there, it's where the bench is right now, actually. Okay. Now, one of the moving parts to this, as I mentioned, or a couple of the moving parts, are that the city ultimately, or as a part of the approval, has to approve a site plan and a building plan. But in this particular situation, now that the city has viewed the proposed location, there's an issue as to the tree. So the city arborist is going out, according to what Mr. Dilla indicated to me today, to determine what the impact would be on that oak tree. So once we determine that, if there's impact there, then alternatively, the proposal would be that it be in the city right of way, which would essentially means it would move more toward the street. It wouldn't be on the Pace Center property. So that's where we are now. So it's on hold until the city arborist looks at the situation to determine the impact on the oak tree. Any questions?
This is not an approval item today.
Not now, no, sir. Not now.
Any questions or discussion for Mr. Darby? Seeing none, Mr. Darby, we're to you on item C.
Number 3, Center of State East addition of land proposal. As a part of one of the requirements of the development agreement between the owner and the city of Lakeland is that the property, which is legally described in the exhibit attached to resolution 20-17, and depicted in that color picture in your agenda package, the owner is a part of the development agreement as prior to approval of the site plan, if I recall the requirement. It's required to request that the land be included in the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District. The land's located north of Interstate 4, east of North State Road 33, and south of Mount Olive Road, as depicted on the great picture there that was produced by the city and copied by James Phillips. So, and this helps for these pictures to be created. So that's the proposal. It'll be Resolution 20-17 to approve the addition of this land into the district. And we have received the appropriate letter from the owner requesting that the land be included. The description is correct.
Questions for Mr. Darby?
Doesn't create the obligation to serve, it just creates the obligation to pay.
Yes, sir. That's it.
What the rest of them?
See, there's federal money that we need in 3 years. See, we're expanding. Anything else from Mr. Darby? This is an approval item.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Darby, anything further?
No, sir.
Item number 8.
So, Mr. Chairman, item number 8 will be tabled and will be part of the presentation we'll call Proposal A,
Okay,
which will be the inclusion of the new route with a funding commitment from local partners.
okay.
But should the board want to look at that at some point, that'll give you an idea of how transit on the east side of the county would change.
Right.
There would be effectively circulators using Posner Park as a new East Polk County terminus. So we'll present that in July.
All right. Here's the true line.
Yes, sir. Agency updates. I'll be brief because I know we're losing a couple board members in a few minutes. And I want to allow time for questions. We are in the governor's phase 2. I'm happy to report that as of today, we still continue to have no cases of COVID-19 at the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District. We do have one employee who is currently out pending a test. We will inform you based on what's happening, but they're following proper CDC guidelines. We continue to replace the saran wrap on all of the buses. The drivers continue to have the ability to wear masks. We are not requiring the drivers to wear masks, but about 80% of our drivers are currently still wearing masks. We are sanitizing the buses at the beginning of every run, the end of every run, and at the beginning of the day, and authorizing a nominal amount of overtime at the end of the day for them to be able to disinfect their bus. And then our cleaning crew takes care of that as well. So we continue to monitor that. Support ridership is over 50%. As you know, we cordoned off all of the seats behind the driver. So that was 3 seats behind the driver and the 3 seats at corner to the driver. We did open up some additional seats behind the driver so that we weren't leaving people at the terminals. Because especially the Gold Line, the Florida Avenue, we're routinely leaving customers now. So we opened up some seats, but the drivers are still safe because that seat directly behind the driver is still open. We continue to have remote work for our administrative staff where possible, in accordance with the governor's request that we allow remote working where possible. But we have set the expectation with staff that when we hit phase 3, that we will have everyone stop their remote work schedules and return to normal. The one change that we're going to test is our call center, which is currently at 1290 Gulfview Avenue. Those are the employees that work the closest together. It's a non-cubicle environment. And so I've talked with Marcia Roberson, our director of the Regional Mobility Call Center, and we are going to try a pilot at having them continue to work from home while we're monitoring the quality assurance of that to make sure that the calls are still being answered in a timely fashion. But that may be an instance of where we allow them to remote work further.
Okay. Do we own that building?
No. Thanks to
Can we save on rent?
thanks to a partnership with the county.
No, we own that building.
The county received, and apropos that we're talking about this, the county received one-time funding for the Veterans Community Living Initiative grant, which was a grant targeted at helping veterans get to and from work and access transportation. So the county utilized those funds to improve 1290 Gulfview Avenue, capital, not operating, Commissioner Lindsay. And we built that center. So that has a useful life. So we do need to continue to use it. So what Marcia and I have discussed is, if this works, moving to a Disney call center style format where employees work from home for 3 weeks and then the entire team reports to the call center for 1 week for inspection, training, et cetera. So that space would continue to be used. Because again, we used federal funds to improve that. I believe we pay for electricity and our fair share of custodial through the county, and the county facilities has a funding methodology and they send us the bill and we pay that bill. I also personally will be taking a vacation for the next 2 weeks. It'll be the longest I've ever been out of the office. And so Mr. Prasad will be in charge of financial matters, and Mr. Dunn, who cannot join us today, his wife's having surgery, so please keep her in your thoughts. Mr. Dunn will be in charge of operational matters for the next 2 weeks, but I'll be available. Obviously, I'm staying domestic given the COVID issues. So if you need me, you can get a hold of me, but the district is in good hands.
Commissioner Walker. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I might have asked this before, and I think I have, but I still remember what answer you gave me. The New Beginnings having a third location out of Fort Meade. Are there, and then is there a service provided to those students?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Commissioner Walker, I would say that the relationship that we have with New Beginnings High School is our strongest. As you know, they pay for the summer of safety.
Right.
So they pay for all the middle school students to be able to ride. I believe that they are a large reason, and I think Ms. Killebrew would back me up on this, that Fort Meade continues to stay within the fair share funding agreements, because it's the only way that those Fort Meade New Beginnings High School students can get there. And thanks to Representative Bell, we added Fort Meade High School, I believe, 2 years ago.
Yeah, we did.
So we've got a really great base of traditional and non-traditional high school students who are using the transit system in Fort Meade. The Fort Meade Community Center, though, continues to far and away exceed our expectations when it comes to ridership.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent question.
Anything else for Mr. Phillips? Last item, Mr. Phillips.
Yes, you have the information. You have my May calendar and the ridership and universal access ridership numbers. And that's the end of my report.
Okay. Any other business to come before the board? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.